So how do we call the general meeting? This is going to be quite simple. We have some times, we have some procedures, and we have some information which must be included in the call. Okay. So when should a meeting be called? There are requirements for the annual general meeting, so within 6 months of the close of the financial year. And as I said, the annual general meeting regards the accounts, and the timing here makes sure that the accounts are not too old. So 6 months for a public company, and the more flexible 9 months for a private company. We also have to bring in the first AGM within a certain amount of time after the company's formation, but again, we have a slightly more generous and flexible time limit. And then when called by directors, requested by shareholders, or ordered by the court, there will be a specific transaction. That will be an extraordinary general meeting, as opposed to the clockwork of the annual general meeting, which will essentially hinge on when the accounts are ready, and there will be this time limit to make sure that the accounts are ready in time to call the meeting. So the power to call a meeting will vest primarily in the board, although the board can be prompted to call a meeting. So essentially we have the directors have this power under section 565, and then we do have the possibility of 5% of the total voting rights sending in a request to the board to call a meeting. And then if the board is for some reason dysfunctional, let's say there is a plane crash and a number of directors are deceased, the members themselves, 10% of the members, may call a meeting with a dysfunctional board. The court may also get involved to call a meeting, if so requested by members or member, on the grounds that it is impracticable to call a meeting in the normal course of affairs. Also, if the AGM is not called, the members may bring this to the court's attention, and they may call a meeting. And then also a creditor may ask the court to call a meeting, and this would be in particular with schemes of arrangement, reorganizing the debt of a company which is on the brink of insolvency. In that case, the creditors may bring to the court's attention a proposal to call a meeting in order to have what's called a composition with creditors. So the court may call a meeting when the directors are not doing so, or the company needs a meeting and it is impracticable to do so, or it is necessary to do so in order to keep the company from entering insolvency and reorganize its debt. So generally it will be the members who are invited and the directors who are invited. Remember that members are not persons who hold the shares of the company, but persons who hold the shares of the company and are registered as members in the register of members. Okay. Auditors must be given copies of all notices and would have a right to attend the meeting in order to explain the accounts, for example. So how and when inviting, we have a couple of relatively clear periods for invitation. The period which is most used will be the 21-day for the AGM. A special meeting, something like removal of a director, is a longer period of 28 days. And then a meeting called for a special purpose, such as a transaction, allocation of shares, something along that line, will be a 14-day period. Notice may be hard copy, electronic, or even web posting. And then the model articles for public companies give a rule for counting the days. The notice for the meeting is going to be pretty intuitively self-explanatory in terms of its content. We have to tell the members where the meeting will be held, when the meeting will be held, what the meeting will discuss, including specifics on a planned resolution. This would allow the members to prepare proxies, for example. Reporting documents for the financial year must also be given to the members with a notice, and we'll look at these reporting documents, in particular the director's report, next week. If there are special decisions on directors' pay and emoluments, that is, benefits that go beyond pay, then this must be specified in the resolution, which will amend the articles to provide for them. And then if the company elects to be exempt from reporting, and we'll discuss this in detail next week, then we have special provisions in the notice to meeting in order to give members ample time to consider this very important decision. The quorum is something we'll look at in the case that we read for this week. And the quorum is something where the members may play with each other just a bit in order to try to prevent member action which they find undesirable. Okay? So a meeting cannot be held unless the required quorum is there, present by proxy or in person at the meeting. And if there is only one member in the company, then the quorum obviously is one. But surprisingly, even if we have very many members in the company, the quorum remains at 2 as specified in the ordinance. And then the model articles do not specify another quorum. If the quorum is not met, the meeting is adjourned, and under the model articles for public companies, the new quorum is 1. And so the quorum is something that we can adjust in the model articles. In the case of E. Harbor that I've asked you to read, you'll see it's essentially an argument where one member wants to hold a meeting in order to do something that the other member does not want to happen. Here, JT wants to remove Kung from the board. And so because the quorum is 2, Kung essentially strikes by not attending the meeting and therefore preventing the meeting from being validly held. At which case then, when JT then shows up to the meeting, JT requests that the court call a meeting on the basis that it is impracticable to hold a meeting according to the ordinance and the articles. And as you'll see the discussion in E. Harbor, there must be strong evidence that the meeting should not be held without the necessary quorum.